5 years ago this August, I was packing all of my belongings into the back of my Mazda 626, and my boyfriend and I drove from Iowa down to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we did that so that I could accept the alternate for a part-time position with this new organization, Citizen Schools, at their brand new campus in New Mexico. And I took a leap of faith. I took a leap of faith that I was going to get the job, that somebody was going to drop out and I was going to get that job, that it was going to work out for me as an organization, that my $500 in my bank account was going to cover me for the months until I got another paycheck. And it all worked out. And throughout the last 5 years, there have been many different times that I've been kind of at a crossroads or just a decision-making point when I've had to either decide whether or not to accept a job outside the organization or accept a new job within the organization or move to a new city even though there's no funding or there's theoretical funding for a school that they kind of think they're going to open, but they're not entirely sure that that's going to happen. And so I feel like there have been a lot of leaps of faith that I've had to take throughout that 5 years in this work. And one of the things that a couple of things I always came back to when I was in one of those positions and trying to decide which way I was going to go. The first was the people that I worked with. I work with such amazing people all the time, and when I got into my car 5 years ago, I had no idea that I was going to become part of an education reform organization or an organization that was on the forefront of trying to close the achievement gap and trying to overcome this social justice issue that we have in the country. And I had no idea that I was going to be here today as a colleague with so many amazing experts and people with such amazing experiences from around the country. The second thing that I always came back to when trying to come to a decision was, do I really think this work is having an impact? And we've talked a lot about data. We've looked at a lot of different graphs that show that, yes, it is having an impact. And we've got surveys that tell us, yes, it is having an impact. But when you're really trying to dig deep and decide whether or not you want to continue doing what you're doing, it's not about data. It's about the kids that I see every day walking into my school and into my classrooms. And do I actually see this work having an impact on those kids and actually transforming the trajectory of their lives? And I do. I see it day in and day out. I see it with, I can think of tons of kids throughout the 5 years who have had a really tangible change in their life based on the experiences they had and the work that we're doing. So I'm going to tell you really quickly about one of those students who always comes to mind when I think about why I do this work. So the first day that we started at DeVargas 4 years ago, we had about 20 students in the cafeteria. And one of those 20 students was named Jorge, and he was a 7th grader. And he was this very cute, shy, sweet kid who was kind of, he was an adolescent, so he was kind of like gangly and awkward, and like his arms and legs kind of seemed to move in different directions at different times. And, but he was a sweet kid, but he also was really struggling. He was suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome. He was developmentally behind. He was having a lot of trouble socially. He also had a learning disability and couldn't really read and write very well and was very behind academically. And the first months that we worked with Jorge, he came into the cafeteria almost every day after school, coming to join us, and would tell us that he needed to call his mom because his stomach hurt and he needed to go home. And he went home almost every day. And we kept working at him, we kept working at him. And eventually it was, once a week, and it was once a month. And by second semester, he wasn't going home at all early. And in fact, instead, he was coming to our office. And almost every day, Jorge would burst through the door, kind of Kramer style. Just there he was with all of his gangly limbs. And he would, and I think over that first year, we really built the trust with that student. He didn't make many academic gains that first year, but we were able to win him over and to feel like he had, so that he felt like he had someone in the school that he really could come and talk to and he really trusted. The second year he was with us, so his 8th grade year, he did actually start to make academic progress. there was an apprenticeship he really wanted to be in that was a cooking apprenticeship, and he wrote, the kids had to write advocacy statements to get into the apprenticeship because it was such a sought-after apprenticeship. And Jorge, struggled with reading and writing, and he went around to all of his teachers. He got his social worker to help him, spell check and grammar check his little statement. And when the rest of the kids turned in literally 1 or 2 sentences, Jorge turned in a full-page, single-spaced, beautifully cursive written essay, perfectly spelled, perfectly grammatically correct, and of course got into that apprenticeship and was a real leader and really did a fabulous job in that class. Academically, he also started to succeed in his AIM class, and I have to give huge credit to Danielle, who's in the audience today, who was his AIM teacher. And she worked with him every day, and he went from a kid who avoided doing homework at all costs because it was not something he felt success in ever, to someone who was bringing his homework regularly to class, doing it, and then asking for more work after that. And by the end of his 8th grade year, he was actually off his IEP altogether. He moved into 9th grade and joined Avid in 9th grade. And last year in 10th grade, he started taking AP classes, and he was so excited, and he would come back to campus and he would tell us about how hard his AP classes were and how he was taking classes in theology and botany, and was telling us about all these different religions he was learning about. And he was so excited to tell us how hard those classes were, because this was a kid who had never, ever had success in school before. And the fact that he was not only taking classes and having success, but these were the hard classes. And he was like going home and doing homework after school. I mean, it completely changed his paradigm about what he could do in school and what he could do in his future. And, I don't have any data to show what's going to happen to Jorge, but I know that he's going to graduate from high school, and I know that he's going to go on to college, and I know that he's going to have a successful future. And I also know that that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't if we hadn't had the pleasure of crossing paths with Jorge in his 7th grade year. And I mean, no discredit to any of his his school day teachers or his case managers or his mom, but Jorge was one of those kids who needed that extra something. He needed that extra time, he needed extra people, and he needed that extra inspiration to see that learning is fun. Like, I can learn for the sake of learning, and it's not because somebody is telling me I have to, but because I want to. And so a lot of you, actually all of you, I think this is the returning session, all of you in this room at some point made a leap of faith that ELT was the right move for your campus or for your kids. And it's not easy, and it's not going to be a smooth path always, and it's going to take a lot of collaboration and teamwork and communication and all those things that we've been talking about, planning, data, all those things we've been talking about over this weekend. But I think it also takes faith. It also takes having faith in our kids and in our in our teachers, in our staff, and in the power of what these types of partnerships can bring.